Breaking Down the Law is sponsored by Battle Born Injury Lawyers.
As we mentioned right before the break, churches have been essentially given the green light to operate at 25% capacity, overruling the governor's previous cap of 50 people. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals relying upon the U.S. Supreme Court's recent decision regarding New York's capacity regulations on religious institutions. So, what does this mean going forward with the governor's extended pause? Here to break down the law, attorney Matt Hoffmann with Battle Born Injury Lawyers. As always, Matt, thank you for being here and explaining us exactly what's going on in simple terms. Let's talk about the issue here because it went from 50 people now to 25% capacity.
Yeah, and so what was actually heard by the Ninth Circuit was an appeal from a lower court's ruling on the 50% capacity order that was previously in place. So this is before the pause. But what the Ninth Circuit said was, look, the U.S. Supreme Court is the law of the land. They recently made the decision in November regarding the New York rules and the restrictions on, religious organization capacity, and said, we have to follow it. And what they ordered is that with the religious organizations, you cannot single them out and treat them differently than everyone else to achieve the same purpose, which is to reduce capacity to reduce the spread of COVID-19. And it's not like the court said, oh, it's not really an emergency or the COVID's not a big deal. Quite the opposite. What they said was, with religious organizations, they have First Amendment protections of religious liberty. And you have to be so careful as a government if you're going to restrict that liberty. And the problem with the New York case and what is the problem with the Nevada situation and the mandates from the governor is only 50 people at a church, no matter what their capacity is. Even if they could hold 1,000 people, you can only have 50 if it's a church. But if it's Costco, Target, Walmart, a casino, you could have 50% capacity even if it's thousands of people. And they said that's just arbitrary, it's capricious, and you can't do it. And what's interesting is this was actually brought to the Supreme Court in July by a church in Nevada on the exact same issue, but it was done on an emergency application, and that was rejected by the Supreme Court without a decision. Well, in July, we had a Justice Ginsburg on the court. Mm-hmm. Now we're in November, and we have Justice Barrett, and that is literally the difference. Both decisions were 5-4. This time, the fifth vote was Justice Barrett. So, to be honest, I'm surprised that these restrictions have lasted this long as to the churches. I don't know that religious people are more contagious or what the rationale was for it. So I'm very surprised that it lasted this long, given the strong protections that religion is given by the First Amendment.
And Matt, that essentially is where it kind of boils down to, that extra protection that's already written into the Constitution. I was thinking, for example, live entertainment here in the city has been capped at 50 people. So if they were to band together and, sue or come up with some sort of lawsuit aimed at bringing more people back, it wouldn't necessarily then have the same protections as religious freedom because that's in our Constitution.
Yeah, the religious freedom is a practice. It's religious liberty. Free speech is protected as well, but I don't know that entertainment could be qualified as some form of free speech. Mm-hmm. It's not being restricted, the speech itself, the performance. It's just the capacity for attendance. At least there you've got some rationale with singing, close proximity, things like that. But sure. Honestly, this ruling, is basically saying to these capacity limits, you got to treat everyone the same.
Aha. Okay, so and basically it boils down to the fact that they're not talking about this pandemic not being an issue. They're not saying that COVID isn't contagious or dangerous or deadly. What they are saying, however, is that freedom of religion does apply in this case, and so that's why they've kind of increased that number.
Yeah, the Constitution doesn't just magically go away because there's a pandemic. Mm-hmm. The government, they can't restrict liberty for religious liberty, and they can't just start taking our houses. That's just, there's rules in the Constitution, and those don't just go out the door because we have a public health emergency. In this Ninth Circuit decision, they made it clear that this applies to what was before them, which was 50% capacity, and any orders going forward. So that includes the current 25% capacity. So if you have a church that holds 1,000 people, you can have 250 people.
Okay.
If if you have a casino that can hold 10,000 people, you can have 2,500 people. And that's just the way that the rule is written, and that's what the court is enforcing.
All right, and we appreciate you breaking down the law, as always, Matt, making it simple for all of us to digest. Thank you for your time. Of course, we'll see you next week.
Sounds good.